Hello, welcome to this next Marvelous Designer tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to have a look at what's called trims. So trims are hard models. They're not necessarily kind of angular and all that sort of thing, but they are rigid. And you can add them to your garment. So, you know, if you're in a position like I am here, you've got a model, you're reasonably happy with it, you're pretty much finished, but you want to add some extra. So what we need to do here is go to the hardware and trims folder, and here we have all sorts of different options, and some of them you can use, like we have these D-rings and all sorts of bits and bobs. And if we go backwards, we've got some buttons and buttonholes and cords and such like, you know, good for hoodies, all that sort of thing. But I've got some ribbons here somewhere. Are they ribbons? Yes, they're ribbons. There we go. And I thought it might be nice to put a ribbon on here. And actually what we've got here is a nice kind of bow tie thing, and I thought it would be kind of nice to put that on the choker. So how do we do that? Well, let me just make my window a little bit clearer, get rid of the pattern. There we go. So if I drag and drop this ribbon into my scene, it will ask me what position. We've got either a reset or original. I'm going to go original. There we go. So that's put it somewhere around chest level. And of course what I want to do is attach it up here. Now I'm just going to move this a little closer, only so I can really see them both at the same time. And if I press the F key here, that's F for Freddy, it will focus in. Now you'll notice that we have here a little pin button, and this is the pin to garment, or glue rather in this case. So if I click that and point to my choker, it's going to throw this bow in all sorts of places, but don't worry about that. I'm just going to make sure I'm pointing to the front of my choker there, and then with my gizmo I'm going to move this into the position I want it. So let's just rotate that around a bit. I'll move it out a little, and now basically when I sim this, wherever the sim takes it with this ribbon here, it's going to take this bow with me. So let's do that and see what happens. So let's start the sim with the space bar. Now you'll see that this is actually kind of pulling at my garment and deforming it a little bit, which isn't necessarily what I want. But if you click on the trim, you'll notice is that all sorts of properties. So you can adjust the scale, you can lock the aspect ratio for that. But the important one here is weight. This is 110 grams, so what that'd be, like 3 Mars bars. Yeah, 3 good kind of, you know, normal size candy bars, I guess. They're about 30, maybe even 4, who knows. So that's basically affecting my ribbon and pulling it away. So if I change that to 0 and let it go, it's just going to stick to my my ribbon, and that's all good. Now if you're not happy about its position after it's simmed, you can always stop the simulation with the space bar, and then you can still move it and then resim, and it should stick exactly where it is. So there we go. So that's a really quick and easy way to add a trim to your garment. As I said, these are rigid. They're not dynamic. They won't kind of flow and do all sorts of things. So these ribbons, for example, I'd be cautious where I put them. Sort of between the breasts, for example, you're going to get a lot of intersection, and it's going to hit the kind of you know, the loops of the bow, and it's going to go all over the place. But quite easy to put one on the back, for example. So let's pick this one, just drag and drop that in, let it go to its original position. So I'm going to think, there we go. and I'll move that to the back, and there we go. I was going to spin it round, but I don't think I need to. So let me just move it a little bit out of the way so I can see what I want to pin it to, or rather glue it to. So point at the pattern piece you want to glue to, because it's going to follow that, and then move it into the position you want it. And because this one again is 200 grams, even heavier, I'm going to lower that and then press space, and you'll see it's still pulling. So let's set that to 0. There we go, and now I've got a nice bow tie at the back. As I said, it's not dynamic, so not perfect, but you know, it's a nice option. It's a really nice option. Okay, so that's the general way trims work. What I'm going to do in the next section or two is make a custom trim that you can import and set up and, you know, use for your own projects. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so we're in Blender now because we're going to make our own trim, and let's just get rid of that as we always do, I guess. And I'm just going to add in a what shall I add in? I'll add in a sphere. Okay, so what I want to do is sort of manipulate this, make it into, you know, whatever model I want, and then we'll take it back out again. So for this, I'm only going to want half of this, so let's go into edit mode with the tab key. Going to go to a front view and press Shift Z to turn on transparent mode, and then I'll select all of those vertices on the bottom nearly to the middle, then press the delete key and vertices, and that will give me my half. Now I want to make this much smaller. I want it to be kind of curved but not a really proper dome. So I'm going to scale this down a bit. Before I do that, I'm going to set my scaling point to the 3D cursor, which is right in the middle there at the bottom, and that will help me because it will just reduce it down but keep this bottom edges intact. So I'll press A to select everything, and then S to scale, Z for the axis, and I'm just going to pull that down. Whoops, not that much. There we go, somewhere around there. Let's press Shift Z again. So now I can make almost anything I want really, and I thought, you know, perhaps I'd make you know, kind of a round kind of plate which I could put on the belt, or, you know, anywhere I want. But you could make a brooch. You could do anything you like. So what do I want to do? I want to close off the bottom. So let me double click to select that line and press F to fill. That will fill that up, and then with that bottom polygon selected, I'll press I to inset and I'll bring that in, then I to inset again and bring that in. Now if I press S and 0, it will collapse it all to the same point, and press enter to close that. And now I want to weld those vertices up, so I'll go to mesh, clean up, and merge by distance, and you'll see my distance is very low. If we look here at 0.0001, and it's, you know, merged to the center point. So if I click off that, just pick another mode, then we can start doing something with this. Right, so what I want to do is perhaps flatten some of this. Actually, no, I don't want to flatten it. What I want to do is just extend the outer ring. So if I double click near one of the verticals there, it will select the loop, and then I can press E to extrude. Actually, I don't want that extrude. Let me undo that. If I go over here and I want to extrude along normals, so that will extrude outwards. There we go. And now I can drop that down a little bit, so I'll press 1 to get into the front view, and I'll click to the gizmo mode. There we go. and I'll just move that down until I get down there. Now it's handy here to kind of turn on snapping, so let's turn that on, make sure I'm on to increment, and should snap down to somewhere around the center point, the low point. Now I want to flatten these as well. That's really straightforward. Let me turn snapping off. So if I type SZ0, it will flatten them down completely. That seems that I might have had more selected than I thought, but no. And I'll just move it back up so it's flat, or so it's proud of the bottom. Okay, let's brace this a little bit with some bevels. So I'm going to bevel around here so that if somebody applies a subdivision modifier to it, it doesn't completely collapse. So Control B to bevel, and then move your mouse and click when you're ready. If you can't get close, just click and then you can type it in here. So what do I want? I want probably about 5mm. Yeah, there we go. And I'll just put two segments in to sort that out. And then I want to do the same around here. I'll show you why. If I apply a subdivision modifier to this, where is it? There it is. You'll see that this bit becomes kind of soft, and I don't want it to be soft. I want there to be a transition between the flat plane and the raised bit. So I'm just going to go to Shift Z again, and I can see what I've got selected. As long as I've got this edge around that transition selected, I'll do Control B and move, get it close. Oops, there we go. Again, probably 2mm, I think this time, with two segments, and then we'll Shift Z and click off that, and now we've got that nice smooth transition. There we go. So, you know, I may not actually want to subdivide this, I might want to use it as it is, but if somebody else wants to subdivide it and it collapses under itself and loses its shape, then, you know, they're probably not going to be the most happy in the world. Okay, so that's basic shape. I will apply my subdivision modifier here actually, but I need to go into edit object mode first. Let's apply that. Just realised my mic's off to the side a little bit, sorry about that. Now I need to UV it. Definitely need to UV this. So I'm going to define some seams. So I'm going to cut around the top there between that transition and the the bulge bit, and then right click and we'll mark seam, and then around where the transitions are between the edges and the bottom, right click and mark seam. And now it's a bit of a judgment call. If I go to the side view, actually I'll go to right, and then I'm going to select up here, showing that's a little bit in the way, that gives me. Let's click off that. There we go. Oh, I'll get it in a minute. Lost me point. There we go. So those are the ones I want. Right click and mark seam. And then I believe if I press Control 3, I'll get the opposite view. So this will be the left view. I'll mark those, press the full stop on the numpad just to go back to it. There we go. Now I'll go to UV editing, press A to select all, and actually if I press U in the 3D viewport, it will allow me to unwrap, and that's not too bad, you know, for this kind of thing. I'm going to want a bit of more clearance between the islands, so I'm going to go to the unwrap options and just increase that until, you know, I get a good clearance. I don't want it to be so close together that, you know, I might get bleed over my, you know, textures, but I don't want it so far apart that, you know, I'm not making the most of my UV space. Okay, so let's press A again, and on the UV menu I'll just hit Pack Islands just to make sure it's as good as it will get. Okay, I could, you know, resize some of these, but Yeah, not sure it's the best idea. I like to keep them all the same, at the same what they call textile density. So if I make any of these islands bigger to make the most of my texture space, the others will need to stay smaller, and that will imbalance their textile density. So if you put like an image texture on there, for one set of islands it's going to be really big, and for another set of islands it'll be quite small. It causes problems. Anyway, so that's making a little piece, and we can export this, of course. So I'll go to File and Export. I'm going to use a Wavefront OBJ. I'll go and find a directory to put it in, or I'll make a directory to put it in. I'll call it trims. There we go. Roundel. Does that sound about right? So I'm selected only, even though I've got nothing else in the scene really, but yep, there we go. Okay, so that was that, and in the next section what we'll do is we'll bring that into MD and turn it into a trim. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so importing is very straightforward. We go File and Import and OBJ, and we'll pick our roundel. So this is the important bit. By default it will come in as open as an avatar. We want it to be a trim. The scaling is, depending upon what scale you've made it at. I've made mine at a ridiculous scale. It's too big. So I'm going to go for centimetres instead of metres. Obviously if you've modelled it more sensibly than I have, then adjust as how can I put it, necessary. And yeah, I'm going to line the bottom to the ground and then click OK. And as it stands, I've my centimetres is too small, so let me press F to zoom in, and I'll click on this little bit here, and this little gizmo is now a scaling gizmo, and I can scale it up and press F to focus on it, and then perhaps zoom out to, there we go. Now it's still too big, the size of her foot. So I'm going to scale it down, 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 down. There we go. Okay, so now we want to pin it to her garment. So if I click this little box here again, I'll get the movement and rotation gizmo up, move it up to somewhere around her waist. I'll press F again to focus on it. Whoops, and then zoom in. Still too big, look. And I'll rotate it round and scale it down. Now I don't advise you do it, you make really big trims. The bigger it is, the less likely it is that it's going to work properly. If it's going across multiple pieces, especially pieces that bend a lot, you're likely to get some oddities, some poke through and all sorts of things. So let me just move that away from there and click the glue option, and I'm going to glue that to there, and then I'll rotate it, whoops, that way and that way until it's about right. So just move that more central, and then when I press the space bar to get it simming again, it's something to think about it. There we go. Should be fine. Now nothing happened because that's a pretty immobile piece of the garment, but if I pull on the skirt and pull it down, you'll see it's actually moving with the waistband. So it's not doing nothing, it's not just sitting there, it's actually a part of the simulation now. It will collide with the garment, it will collide with the avatar, Okay, so what if you want more than one? Well, if you select it and right click and copy, and then right click and paste, you can point to another part of your garment and add it again. And let's try Control C and Control V. That works, it's more convenient. There we go. Now I've got 3, and if I let it sim, I might need to do some minor adjustments. but no, that looks alright actually. Yep, no, that's fine. So, you know, if I were, how can I put it, more prone to cause you torture by showing you how to do it right the way around, you know, that might be, you know, something you'd want to do, but I mean, it would take too long to show it, and I think you get the idea. Okay, so in the next bit we'll have a look at trim properties to see, you know, if there's anything there we can adjust to, you know, make these better. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, let's have a quick look at the properties here. So if I select one of them, we'll see over here it's got lots of properties. We have scale, so we can lock the aspect ratio or unlock it. So I could say reduce this down to 13 and I'll have a, you know, slightly different shape, or we could undo that and we're back to normal. So you can, you know, change them independently. You know, if your thing is coming in a little too thick, you could perhaps change the depth and, you know, adjust that down. I imagine the depth is Z, but I'm not convinced. No, it's not, it's Y. So yes, you could flatten them a little bit if you wanted to. We've got our weight. Of course, we looked at the weight earlier. We could make them heavier if we wanted to, and we might look at that in a later section. We have collision, which I can't seem to activate or otherwise, which is fine. Collision thickness is 1, so it will hover a little bit, but not too much from your avatar, or from your garment rather. Then we have our material properties. So these I think I would want to be metallic. So let's switch this over to, whoops, switch it over to metal. There we go. Now we can mess with the basic parameters. We can give it a different color. Going to go a bit more, perhaps a little darker, perhaps towards blue. There we go, somewhere around there. I'm going to just click in there for the moment, and I want to add this color to my palette because I'm going to need it, because when I come to this one I want to have the same color, of course, similar for this one, and these two I obviously want to set the metal property as well. Metal, there we go. So I could have put different material zones on this, and that would have given me even more, you know, options. I could have taken it into, say, Substance Painter, and I could have painted, you know, some nice designs or so on and so forth, and then I could bring them in here to use them. So that's those bits. I think I'd want my bow not to be matte. Let's put that to shiny, silk satin shiny, and we'll have a darkish charcoal grey there. There we go, that looks better. And for my little ribbon at the back, we'll do the same. I could have copied my previous one for the bow tie to my custom colours there, of course, but I didn't. I forgot. Okay, so what are the properties have we got? So we've gone through scale, we've gone through this, we could put some displacement on it, colour of course, we could set an opacity map, the reflection we can change if we wanted to. Might just want to do that on the metal rather than the ribbon there. So metalness is 100, reflectivity, intensity, I could bring that down and it would become a little duller, not an awful lot by the looks of it. We have our roughness intensity. I could put a roughness map in, of course, to, you know, make it a little bit tarnished and dirty. But other than fiddling with the material properties, all I've got is what mesh type it is and an element count. Now I don't know if I change this whether it actually changes. It doesn't, no. And you know, I can't change that either. So we're a little limited on our, you know, options here, but they seem to work very well, and I think you could do a lot with it. You know, if you made say a chest armor piece, a leather chest armor piece, I think you could easily make, you know, some scale pieces to go on that, you know, or some, you know, just plates to place over it to, you know, give it that really lovely effect, or extra touch if you like. Let's just click off that for the moment. Let's go into a rendered mode, and yeah, I think without them it would look, you know, it would look duller. And of course I can carry on adding things to this until the cows come home. One thing I want to have a quick look at is whether I can save a trim. So in the next section we'll have a look at that and see where we go. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so saving one couldn't be simpler. If you go to File, Save As and Trim, it will give you a list of trims in your scene. Pick one, it will focus on it, and I suspect this will give us a thumbnail. And then if I click Save, and now I'm in my Assets, Materials, Hardware, Trims ribbon directory currently. I don't want to be there. I'm going to create a new folder in the Hardware and Trims. Let's call it John's, and go in there and let's type in Roundel and save. Oops, there we go, and that saved our Roundel. Now if I go and find my Hardware and Trims, there we go. Let's see, yeah, it's picked up that I've got a Roundel in there. It hasn't put a thumbnail in. I'd have to find something to do that with, but I should theoretically be able to drag that into my scene now. Question is, have I got it there? No. Well, let's right click, add to workspace, original position, open. So think about it for a moment. There we go. Yes, it's loaded exactly where the original loaded, and perhaps I want to do something different with it. Let's move this over here and rotate it around, and perhaps I want to put a number sort of down the side of here. Whoops, I've lost it now. Press Shift A to hide my avatar. I'll just look up inside, Shift A again to show it, and then pull it out. So I can right click, and it's not glued to anything, that's good. So let's just glue it somewhere around there. I'm going to scale it right down because I want these to be smaller, obviously. And let's press space to sim it and see how we go. That's fine. So I'll just stop that. I'm going to go to Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. I'm just going to space these out down the side of this skirt. Control C, Control V. If I was brighter, I'd have found a seam to put it either side of, but I'm not, because that kind of might have made sense. There we go. Control C, Control V. Just going to go right down to the bottom. Two more, I think. Oops, lost my mouse. There we go. And now if I press space, fingers crossed, nothing will go wrong, and it hasn't. Hurrah! So if I pull that around, you should see that they move. I can see that this one is perhaps a little kind of badly spaced, so I'll stop the sim, click on it, just move it up a little bit, and press space, and away we go. Is it going? Yes, it is. So yes, you can really add some, you know, some nice models to your garments. You know, there are some limitations. You know, they're not dynamic. As you can see, you know, these ribbons, for example, would be lovely if they were dynamic, because they would, you know, flap around and flop as you know, want them to. But for the bow tie, I think it's perfect, because I don't want it to, you know. There we go. But just one note on that. If you go to your hardware and trims and have a look in the ribbons folder, where is it? I know it's here somewhere. There we go. There's a Z-Pak folder, and this has got the actual models they made them out of, because I think almost everything I've looked at, all these accessories, including the buttons, they've actually made with Marvelous Designer. They haven't used another program. So you know, you could perhaps utilize those, you know, in your garments. Unfortunately here you can't sort of add it to a scene. Oh, I can add it to a scene. I tried everything earlier, dragging and dropping and doing all sorts of things. So yeah, let's right click this and add to workspace. I want it to add and click OK. There we go. Now I can zoom in, and now I would simply have to find some way of pinning this to my garment, probably just with a pin, I would have thought, but for now what I'm going to do is select my pin box and just pin a few of those there. It's not going to let me pin it. Why aren't you letting me pin it? Ah, it is going to let me pin it. There we go. So I'm cheating for the moment, because I do. And let's press space and see what happens. Yes, nice little dynamic ribbon there on the front, that you could use, you know, and adjust and amend and do all sorts of things in your garments. There we go. I'd probably try and pin that at the back to be honest, but this is just a bit of a also added kind of bit of content. It's not thick, because you know, you see the back one is thick. That's thick because when it's been exported with thickness, whereas the original doesn't have the thickness on it. So you know, the original MD file is just, you know, single thickness. Anyway, I hope you found that useful and not too waffly, and I will talk to you in another session. So I'll talk to you then.